All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's the 7 Hermetic principles. You know, those ancient teachings from the Kybalion, the ones that claim to have the secrets of the universe and maybe even the power to change it.
Oh, yeah. Some pretty big claims.
Definitely. So we're going to see if they hold up to science and how you can actually use them, in your life.
Well, it is fascinating to think about how the Kybalion, which came out in 1908, says it's based on Hermes Trismegistus.
Oh, right, Hermes. Super mysterious figure.
Yeah, thought to have lived even before Abraham.
Wow. So we're talking ancient wisdom here. But how much of that wisdom actually made it into the Kybalion?
That's the thing. Even the authors say a lot of it was passed down orally or hidden in symbols.
I see.
It wasn't really until the 20th century that they laid out these principles in a way that we can, actually understand.
Okay, makes sense. So let's break down these 7 principles. We've got mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. It is. First up, mentalism. The Kybalion says the all is mind. The universe is mental. Are they saying that the entire universe is like one giant thought?
That's the core idea, yeah.
Yeah.
And it actually kind of connects with some modern physics ideas, especially in quantum mechanics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some physicists are looking into how consciousness, might play a part in shaping reality.
So maybe these ancient mystics were like way ahead of their time?
It's possible.
What would it mean if our thoughts really have that much power?
Well, the Kybalion really stresses the power of mastering your own mind. If reality is, at its core mental, then understanding and controlling your thoughts could unlock some pretty amazing abilities. It definitely raises a lot of questions and possibilities.
Definitely food for thought. Okay, next is correspondence. As above, so below. What's that all about?
Imagine a novelist creating characters. Those characters only exist in the writer's head, right? But their choices, their actions, they drive the whole story. Correspondence suggests a similar relationship, but between different planes of existence. So what happens on a higher plane, like the mental or spiritual, it's mirrored on a lower plane, like our physical world, and the other way around.
So by understanding how things work in the physical world, could we understand higher realms better?
That's what it suggests. And it opens up some really interesting things to think about. If we can unlock the patterns and principles in our lives, it might give us clues about how the whole universe works.
Now on to vibration. The Kybalion states, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This one feels like science is backing it up, right?
Absolutely. Modern science has shown that everything in the universe, sound, light, is basically vibration at its core. Even matter itself, it's all vibrating particles.
Okay, so that part makes sense. But the Kybalion goes further, saying thoughts and emotions also have their own vibrational frequencies. Is there any science behind that?
That's where things get a little less certain. Physics has established that the physical world vibrates, but saying that about thoughts and emotions is still largely theoretical.
I see.
Though some modern researchers are looking into this in fields like bioenergetics.
It's a fascinating concept for sure. All right, let's talk about polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, light and dark, good and evil. So they're all like two sides of the same coin.
That's the idea. The Kybalion says these opposing forces aren't really separate, but extremes on a spectrum, a continuous one. Love, hate, fear, courage. They're all points on that spectrum.
So are you saying you could shift along that spectrum and turn negative emotions into positive ones?
That's a key takeaway from this principle, yeah. If you understand that these opposites aren't absolute, but just degrees of the same force,
Right.
It changes how you see challenges. You might even be able to change that negative energy into something good.
Interesting. Okay, now on to rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall.
Yeah.
Isn't that just like common sense? Life has ups and downs.
Right, exactly. But the Kybalion sees this cyclical nature as a universal principle. It applies to everything, not just our experiences.
No.
Relationships, careers, even civilizations, they all go through periods of growth and decline, ebb and flow,
So is it just about accepting that change is inevitable? Or is there something more to it?
There's more to unpack, for
Yeah.
sure. Understanding rhythm is about recognizing these cycles and learning how to deal with them, how to navigate them well. Imagine if you could anticipate the ups and downs, know when to push forward and when to hold back, when to ride the wave, and when to get ready for the next one.
That would be amazing. Okay, let's dig into cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chances, but a name for law, not recognized. Are they saying there's no such thing as luck?
The Kybalion argues that the universe works according to very specific laws, unwavering ones. Every action has a reaction. Every cause leads to an effect. We might not always understand those laws or see the consequences right away, but they're always there.
So every choice we make, every action, it could have a ripple effect with consequences we don't even see.
Right.
That's powerful, but kind of scary too. What do you think about that?
It really highlights how much power we have, but also our responsibility. If everything follows laws, then understanding those laws could help us shape our reality more intentionally, but it also means we have to be careful about what we set in motion.
That's a lot to think about. Okay, last one. Gender. I know what you're thinking, but the Kybalion isn't talking about, male and female in the usual way, right?
Right. It's not about that. It's talking about masculine and feminine principles, like fundamental forces that work on every level, mental, spiritual, and physical. They're not tied to biological sex or, gender roles.
So what are these masculine and feminine principles then?
Think of it like a dance, a creative one, between two forces that complement each other. The feminine principle is the active force, the one that creates. And the masculine principle is the receptive force, the structure that receives and shapes that energy.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. Is there anything in science that supports this idea of masculine and feminine principles as, like, fundamental forces?
Well, think about the atom. You've got positive and negative charges, electrons going around a nucleus. That interaction between opposites could be seen as a reflection of these principles, even at the smallest level of matter.
It's amazing to think that these ancient principles might line up with modern science. So, looking at all 7 principles, do you think there's scientific evidence to support these ideas, or are they just philosophical?
It's not an easy answer. Some principles, like vibration, fit pretty well with what science understands. Others, like the idea that thoughts shape reality, are more speculative but have interesting links to new research
I
areas.
think there's a lot more to uncover. For our listeners, what's the main takeaway from this first look at the 7 Hermetic principles?
I'd say it's to consider these principles with an open mind. Even if you're not sure if they're ultimately true, they offer a really powerful way to understand the universe and ourselves. They can be tools for personal growth, for making sense of the world, and maybe even for unlocking hidden potential.
This has been a great start. I'm already seeing things differently. But how do we actually use these principles in our daily lives? That's what I'm really wondering.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? It's cool to think about all this, but how do we actually use these hermetic principles to, improve our lives?
That's what makes it so exciting. The Kybalion says these aren't just like theories. They're practical tools for growth, for real transformation.
Okay, I like where this is going. Let's get practical then. How about mentalism? If the universe really is mental, like the Kybalion says, how do we even start to apply that in real life?
It begins with understanding how powerful your own thoughts are. If reality is a reflection of the mind, then mastering your mental state is super important.
This principle is about becoming more aware of your thoughts, challenging the negative ones, and really trying to cultivate, a positive mental space.
So it's more than just like thinking positive thoughts. It's about actually shaping your mental reality.
Yeah.
How is that different from those positive affirmations we hear so much about?
It's definitely related, but the Kybalion digs deeper. It's about looking at your deepest beliefs, the ones you really hold on to, and choosing thoughts that match your goals, what you want to achieve. It's about understanding that your thoughts have power, creative power, and that you can use that power to shape your experiences.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. What about correspondence? How can we use that principle to understand ourselves and the world better?
Remember that analogy with the novelist and their characters?
Yeah.
Well, correspondence suggests that what happens in our own lives is like a mirror of bigger patterns and principles in the universe. It's like an invitation to look for those connections, to see yourself as like a microcosm of the whole universe.
So, like, if I'm going through a tough time, lots of chaos in my life, could that be reflecting a bigger change, like a cosmic shift?
It's definitely something to think about. Correspondence encourages us to look for those parallels, to see how everything's connected. Maybe by understanding the laws of the universe, we can handle our own lives better.
Okay, let's move on to vibration. We talked about how everything is basically vibration, but how can we actually use that to improve our lives?
The Kybalion suggests that we can actually raise our vibration on purpose by, cultivating positive emotions, focusing on higher ideals, and doing things that promote harmony and balance.
Okay, so good vibes attract good vibes. But is there, like, any actual science to back up that idea of vibrational attraction?
That's an area where science is still catching up, I'd say. There's no definitive proof yet, but there are some interesting findings in quantum physics and bioenergetics. They suggest that our thoughts and emotions might actually have an effect on the world around us, subtle but measurable. More research is definitely needed, but it's a really fascinating area to explore.
For sure. Okay, how about polarity? We talked about how things that seem opposite are actually just different degrees on the same spectrum. How can we apply that in everyday life?
The Kybalion suggests that by understanding polarity, we can actually change negative emotions into positive ones. So instead of trying to, suppress or deny negative feelings, you can recognize them as part of that spectrum and then consciously shift your focus to the positive side.
So instead of fighting fear, I could try to shift my energy towards courage. Or instead of dwelling on sadness, I could focus on finding joy.
Exactly. It's recognizing that you have the power to choose where you put your attention and energy, and by consciously choosing to vibrate at a higher frequency, so to speak, you can move along that spectrum and, well, experience a more positive emotional state.
I really like that idea. Okay, let's talk about rhythm. We talked about how everything moves in cycles, but how can we use that knowledge to deal with those ups and downs in life, the ones that are always going to happen?
By understanding rhythm, you can learn to ride those waves of change with more grace and resilience. Instead of fighting the natural ebb and flow, you can anticipate it, prepare for it, even use it to your advantage.
So instead of freaking out when things go bad, I could see it as a natural part of the cycle and know that things will get better again.
Exactly. It's about seeing that challenges and setbacks aren't failures, they're just part of the natural rhythm. And by understanding that principle, you can deal with those challenges with, more wisdom and a sense of peace.
Okay, now cause and effect. The Kybalion says the universe works according to laws, not chance. How can we use that to create the life we want?
It's about becoming more aware of the choices you make, the actions you take. Recognizing that every cause has an effect empowers you to take responsibility for your life and to shape it with intention.
So it's not about hoping for good things to happen. It's about actively making choices that lead to what we want.
Exactly. It's about understanding that you're not just watching, you're an active participant in creating your own reality.
That's powerful. Okay, last one, gender. We talked about masculine and feminine principles as like fundamental forces. How can we apply this in our everyday lives?
It's about finding balance. The Kybalion encourages us to see both masculine and feminine qualities within ourselves and to try to express both in a harmonious way. It's not about following traditional gender roles, it's about embracing the strengths and qualities of each principle.
So for example, if I'm feeling stuck creatively, I could tap into more of that masculine energy to get things moving. Or if I'm feeling burned out, could I use more of that feminine energy to take care of myself, find some stillness?
That's a great way to think about it. The key is to be aware of those energies within you and to find a balance that works for you, that supports your well-being and growth.
This is all so fascinating. It feels like we could talk about each principle for hours. But for our listeners who are ready to start using these teachings, what's the best way to begin?
I would say read the Kybalion yourself. Don't just take our word for it. Engage with it, think about it, and see what clicks with your own experience, how you see the world.
Totally agree. It's one thing to hear about it, but to really feel the power of these principles, you got to experience them yourself. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about something. We've talked about all the good things that can come from using these principles, but are there any, downsides or risks?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like with any powerful tool, these principles could be misused or people could misunderstand them. What are some things to watch out for?
One thing is, if you focus too much on mentalism, it could lead to what's called spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, it's where people kind of ignore real-world problems by just saying everything is about the power of thought.
Oh, I see. So instead of actually doing something about a problem, they might just be like, oh, I'll just manifest a better reality.
Exactly. And while our thoughts do have a lot of influence, it's important to remember that, we live in a physical world with real consequences. Positive thinking alone can't solve everything. Sometimes you got to take action. Right. It's about finding that balance between inner work and, doing something in the real world. Are there any other potential downsides?
Another critique of the Kybalion is that the cause and effect principle could be twisted to blame people for their problems.
Oh, how so?
Like someone might say that a person who's struggling is just getting what they deserve because of their past thoughts or actions.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to be aware of. It's like we're all part of these complex systems, and a person's situation is influenced by so many things. Just saying it's all about personal responsibility, it oversimplifies things and ignores all the systemic issues that, contribute to inequality.
Exactly. You got to approach these teachings with a critical eye and use them ethically responsibly.
Okay, so after all this, what's the verdict? Are the Hermetic principles scientifically valid, or are they just cool philosophical ideas?
It's not a simple answer. Some principles align with science, while others are more in the realm of speculation and metaphysics. But even those more mystical ideas, they can give us valuable insights into being human and, can be powerful tools for personal growth if used thoughtfully and responsibly.
So it sounds like the real value is in exploring these principles, seeing how they resonate with us with our own understanding of the world.
Absolutely. What's beautiful about these teachings is that they encourage us to question, to explore, to discover. And in that journey, we might find insights and tools that can help us live more meaningful, more fulfilling lives.
I think that's a great message for our listeners. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add about the Kybalion or the seven Hermetic principles?
I just say, remember that the Kybalion is one interpretation of these principles. There are many other paths, traditions that explore similar ideas. Don't be afraid to explore different perspectives, read other books, and find what really speaks to you, what resonates deeply.
Great advice. It's all about finding what works for you on your own journey. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the seven Hermetic principles. We've covered their history, their connection to science, and how we can use them in our lives. And we also talked about how important it is to be, discerning and responsible when using these teachings.
It's been great exploring this with you.
I feel inspired to go back to the Kybalion to see how I can use these principles in new ways. And I hope our listeners feel the same way.
Me too. Remember, this is just the start. Keep those minds open, stay curious, and never stop searching for knowledge and understanding.
That's a great way to put it. And on that note, we've come to the end of our deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring those mysteries of the universe, and don't forget to share your own insights and discoveries along the way.